All right, well, it's 2:02. I think we're going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. So I just would like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Thank you for joining us. We have a very exciting discussion in store for you all, one that is very relevant to today, as we're seeing from the chat. As vaccinations for COVID-19 are rolling out, many employers are now faced with a very complex and unprecedented issue in regards to how exactly are they bringing employees back to the office when it comes to remote, hybrid, or fully in the office. Some of the issues that we're going to be discussing today that we're going to tackle is just a few seeds to plant for you guys to think about as we go into this. How can companies sustain and grow their culture during these unprecedented times? How do remote and hybrid options impact an organization's culture? So those two tie in together a little bit. How can leadership keep employees engaged and communicate effectively at all levels of the organization? How can leaders, organizations, and teams navigate this change? And what are the benefits of having a coach when leading in a remote or hybrid environment? To discuss and answer these burning questions, I'd like to introduce Miranda Troy. Miranda is our senior consultant here at TLG. She is a former HR executive and has over 20 years of experience in human resources. Miranda is known for putting the human in human resources. Miranda specializes in executive coaching, leadership development strategies, career development, and so much more. She is also certified in performance management innovation by the Human Capital Institute. So Miranda, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so happy you're here to discuss these relevant issues. Now, joining us also, sorry, Miranda, I cut you off.
No worries, thank you.
And to join us today to help facilitate this discussion is TLG's own Victoria Abelson, who's our senior consultant in healthcare. Vicki is a certified professional coach with over 15 years of healthcare leadership experience. Vicki specializes in helping clients to understand themselves better, developing action plans that move beyond to-do lists, and creating personalized and meaningful accountability that propels a leader forward. Her coaching certification comes from the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching. So thank you, Vicki, for being here.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so if just before we start, if anyone has any questions, we will be dedicating the last 5 minutes or so, or 10 minutes, I should say, to Q&A. So as you're here listening to them discuss these topics, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we're going to get to those at the end of the webinar. But with that, Vicki, please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here and excited to have this very, very important discussion. I think as JP shared, we're all obviously kind of in this transition of coming out of a pandemic and something that none of us have ever really have dealt with before. And so, Miranda, I'm really excited to hear your thoughts about some of the questions that we have planned for today. So I'm curious, we've obviously have had a big cultural shift when we started working from home and now as we are going back. So how can companies sustain and grow their cultures after, as they're going through this coming back to work phase?
Yeah, thank you, Vicki. Very excited to be here as well. So, when we talk about culture, I think it makes sense to start with what is culture, right? What is our common definition of culture? And really, it's a way of life for groups of people, and meaning the way they do things, right? And companies are, obviously have cultures, and oftentimes employees want to understand what that culture is. But even within a company, cultures emerge, right? You can have a West Coast culture that's extremely different from an East Coast culture if you're, a large company. Within departments, right? A marketing department can have a very different culture from a technology department, from a human resources, from a finance. And then within those departments, teams will establish their own cultures and, the way they do things as well. So just kind of wanted to level set with, when we talk about culture, what are we talking about? And I think that, what really determines the culture is the senior leadership team. We've all heard that saying, right? Toxic leaders can kill. And what that means really is that they can kill the culture. But on the flip side, really good leaders can build culture. And I think that the pandemic challenged all of these pre-existing cultures, because so much of the culture work, or the culture is created by the face-to-face interactions that we're having in the office and the relationships that we're building. So now we had to take this all remote, very suddenly.
Yeah.
And, and we had to not only learn how to manage our team remotely and hopefully keep the culture that we had established, if it was one we were proud of, one, based on integrity and character, then, we wanted to keep that intact. But at the same time, we were really starting to navigate our own personal challenges. And so when I think of culture and really a lot of this conversation, I wanted to bring up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So it's a basic fundamental psychology, belief. It's been around forever. I think I learned about it in high school psychology. So I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with it, right? But it to me, it stands out in this pandemic because I think about where I was as a human 15 months ago. And my basic needs were being shaken, right? Like, I didn't know, was I going to get the disease? Was my family members going to get the disease? Would we be okay? Would we not be okay? Was I going to be able to get toilet paper? All of these really basic needs that are at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy were being challenged and being questioned. And I think, it's just unrealistic to think that as a human, be it a leader, be you're a CEO, be, a vice president, just a team member, whatever, that you weren't shaken. And so I like to think about it from that aspect, because now that the vaccination is on and we're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, we're actually moving back up towards the pinnacle of the pyramid, right? It's like, okay, we have a vaccination. I didn't get it, or I did get it and I was okay, or, unfortunately maybe not. But we have this vaccination and now we're starting to get up the pyramid and think about our psychological needs. And I don't think that it's any surprise, that the need for belonging is really important. So, I think on this journey, as people go up the pyramid and get back up to the self-actualization top of it, that's where TurkNet can help the most, right? We know that senior leaders are critical to shaping the foundation, and without a foundation of integrity and trust, combined with respect for each other and responsibility to each other, sustained success is rare. So we focus on leadership character. And that's the character that leaders need to create cultures of trust, commitment, and mutual accountability. And I know we're going to talk a lot more about that.
Yeah, and I love that, because also as we transitioned into the pandemic, right, we didn't really have any notice. We went from working in the office to working remote within a day for a lot of people. And so we didn't have the luxury of thinking about what is our culture going to be in a remote place. But now we do have a little bit of, it's not really the luxury, but it is in some ways the luxury of being able to think through and really be strategic about how will we bring our people back in a way that does meet their needs all along that pyramid.
Totally.
Yeah. So thank you very much for sharing that. In the chat, what was interesting is a lot of people said that they kind of have these different models, right? Of being fully in the office, being fully remote. Some people are being a little bit of a combination. So do you think that these different hybrid models are going to impact a company's culture, and how can we help address that?
Yeah, I think that they totally will. And one of the things that I keep thinking about is, if you have the hybrid option, right, and you have some employees who are face to face, it becomes really difficult to create an equitable work experience for every person, right? And so when I think about the work that we here at TurkNet do around diversity and inclusion, I think that inclusion becomes really, really key in a whole new way, because as a leader, you're going to have to start thinking through, okay, how am I going to make the folks who, for whatever reasons, are remote, feel like they are part of the team when these other, how is that inclusion going to happen? So I think it's going to be a very different lens on inclusion, which, has always been a challenge for organizations and leaders anyway, and it's going to add an extra layer to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So to that point, and I know you've touched on this a little bit already, but what can leaders and management teams do to make sure that their employees and teams are engaged? That might be spanning the different spans of working from home, working in the office, Zooming, etc.
Yeah. So it's interesting. When many years ago, I was actually at Delta Airlines, and I was helping to roll out the first wave of reservation sales work from home employees. And we spent a lot of time, attracting the right talent and thinking through employee engagement and how we would really create teamwork and collaboration and all of those things. And, I think that leaders are going to, ultimately we have great technology these days. And I do think, making sure that you have those scheduled one-on-ones and you have those scheduled team meetings, and really encouraging and asking your team members to use the video function. I always think about communication norms, right? And so much of what we actually communicate is not through the words that we're using, but through the body language and all of those things that we're missing out on. So I think really encouraging the video. And ultimately, as more and more of your team members become vaccinated, and what I think we're actually starting to see here at TurkNet is opportunities to bring them together face to face again, right? Like, it's been a good solid probably 18 months now since we've done offsites, and you just think of everything that's happened, who's gotten married, who's had children, who's new to the team. Right. I know in one of the current projects I'm working on with TurkNet, we're bringing together a large nonprofit for several day offsite, and we'll be facilitating 2 days. And there's 15 of them. And I want to say, 5 of them are new to the team. They've never really met these people. And again, thinking back to that hierarchy of needs, and that, we've gotten through safety, right? And those basic needs. And now we want that belonging and those psychological needs. So I think starting to really think about, bringing those teams face to face again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really excellent point. I think people are sort of eager for connection. And so how can we facilitate that connection is really important to keep top of mind for people, not just how can we hit our metrics or our goals, but how can we facilitate connection? Yeah.
Yeah, there was such proof of this to me as I had a really good friend fly in for Mother's Day weekend as a surprise, and it was lovely and it was wonderful and all of that. But just hearing her experience, of being in the airport on Sunday, I think most children were flying home for Mother's Day. Typically it's the day after Thanksgiving that's the busiest travel day. That airport was slam packed with people, and I think you're seeing it in our actions, right? That we're just ready.
We're ready.
We're ready to embrace each other again.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and to that point too, there's just been so much change being thrown at us, right, over the past year, and it continues to be thrown at us. Every new CDC guidelines, new vaccinations, new policies at work, et cetera. So as we are managing through all of this change, how can organizations and leaders really help us manage through that change?
Yep. I mean, I know it's no surprise, right? But communication is key. And I think about, the coaching work and the leadership development work that we do. And so much of it is based on communication, right? And based on ways in which you can improve your communication and adapt your communication to your audience. And I think that, again, we have all of these kind of extra layers of difficulty. Just what's we're experiencing right now, right, is like everybody had these plans, for the return to office. And these plans were built around making sure that people were going to have the mask mandates in place and the social distancing. And now here we are a week later, and the CDC has radically changed that. And, everybody's going, I don't know. Yeah. And I think that now more than ever, leaders have to be comfortable with that ambiguity to say to their employees, I hear you. I don't know. We're looking for the answer, and we will get back to you. Right.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I think also just having the understanding that we're all just tired of all that change, right? It's that change fatigue, and giving people sort of that space to be like, take a breather and be like, it's okay. It's good. It's going to be fine. We're going to get through this together.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'm really big on, and I know, we even have an offering around is, and I think that it's been critical during this time, is just mindfulness meditation, right?
Yeah.
And being able to take, and you can do it in as easy as 3 minutes, but to just, to your point, Vicki, like feel the fatigue.
Yeah.
And just step away for 3 to 5 minutes and really calm yourself, from a mind perspective and everything, to get through it, and encourage your team members to do it too.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And just viewing these things as an opportunity to build our character, to build our culture, to build our resilience. Those things are like seeing sort of the upside of these really, really challenging situations.
Yep. And we're all managing through it. It's all new to us. And just understanding where people are and being patient.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What would you say? Why is it important to have a coach when leading these fully remote teams or hybrid teams? And what are the benefits of that?
Yeah. So, to me, ultimately coaching is about the soft skills. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you have experienced this whole pandemic, with a leader who really, who knows how to showcase their empathy, right? To really put themselves in your spot, then you've probably weathered the storm a little bit better. I think, unfortunately, when you think about how many people have been challenged by personal challenges and work challenges and all of that, and stress can often not bring out the best in any of us. Not everybody's in that situation, and they need some help navigating it. Also, I'm really big on accountability through my own coaching practice, and it's part of, our leadership character model. Accountability can't just go by the wayside right now because things are challenging. But there is a certain way in which you can hold your team members accountable in a very kind and empathetic way. And I think a lot of leaders right now, are struggling with that. They're struggling with that accountability. That's great. I think JP just put up the leadership character model. And so, working here at TurkNet, I love coaching to this model because I really do believe in it. And I believe that, helping others see this model and understand how to put it into practice is really critical and can be really beneficial through all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so true. I think a question that we get a lot as coaches is, isn't this the responsibility of a person's leader, right? To sort of coach them into some of these answers. But the truth is, it can be hard as a leader, as having direct reports, because you're in it with them and you're experiencing some of those same things with them. And so having somebody who's objective and who can really provide a safe space for discovery and for growth and for accountability can be really, really pivotal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, oftentimes what I have found through coaching at various organizations, and it's no fault of any organization, but oftentimes the soft skills are never focused on, right? It is like the career path up, through promotion is through really good hard skills. And I always go back to a Delta example, early on in leadership, it was, if you could get that flight out on time, then here's your radio and now you're a supervisor.
Yes.
What does dispatching a flight on time have to do with managing people?
100%. Yeah.
And again, a lot of organizations do that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But, having a coach and having a coach manage or help somebody through challenging times, I think can be really critical.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. People oftentimes get promoted because they're so good at the what, but how can we support them on being good at the how?
How? Yeah. Yeah. And understanding that everybody on their team, has different challenges and different ways of wanting to be communicated with. And how can you adapt your style, and how can you, see those things and coach them? And ultimately, that's the joy of coaching, right? Is that if you can coach somebody, then they're going to, if it's done well, then they're going to coach the next person. And it's just, kind of a constant give back into the positive reinforcement in the universe.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We've touched on this a little bit already, and I kind of just want to ask one last question about this, but hybrid models of work really create opportunities for new ways for teams to meet and for communicate. How can TLG help to develop and build some of these teams so that they can operate effectively under these different situations?
Yeah, I think we have a number of offerings, right? We actually even have a remote workforce assessment. Mm-hmm. So, and we had this even pre-pandemic, right? So you can actually assess, how ready for remote work your team is. So I think through that, I think through some of the team development work that we do, a lot of the different assessments and coaching models that we have can really start to do that and help teams get stronger.
Thank you so much. And what's interesting to me about what you just said is in some ways, some organizations have already been doing remote work in one way or another for a long time, regardless of. So even if they were working with teams in different states, like their West Coast team or their East Coast, or vendors that are in different places. So in some ways, we already have some precedents for how to do this, but sort of tapping back into that and remembering we can do these things. And we
can do hard things.
We can do hard things. Yeah, we can do hard things. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Melinda, thank you so much for all of that guidance and the thinking around kind of coming back to work. I want to leave some time for questions for our audience today. So if you want to put in questions into the chat, or we see one question in the Q&A, which I will pop up right now.
Great.
So the question is, should Maslow's analogy really be represented as a pyramid? This last year made me think it more of an agile and dynamic sailboat and not land-based at all. That's an interesting.
I love that question.
Yeah, I love that question.
Yeah, gosh, I would love to hear more about that. But I think, for me, here's what's happening and why I pulled Maslow's out and went back to it. To me, it is a pyramid because what I really felt as a human was a shake to the foundation of, 15 months ago. And what I'm seeing as more of an HR professional now is that people are going back towards the top. And again, the top of that is self-actualization. And, one thing that I do feel is coming in the workforce and has been kind of prevalent on LinkedIn right now is the Great Resignation. Mm. And that is because I think people had their foundation shaken. Now they've gotten through it. The foundation is solid. So now they're going back to that self-actualization. They're having those deeper thoughts and they're really questioning things. And I think it's going to go across every generation because I can think about somebody who might be closer to a retirement, accelerating that retirement because they didn't get to see their grandkids for a year. Yeah. And now they're out, right? Because now they know what's important. They know where they want to be spending their time and they're ready to retire sooner than they would have been 15 months ago. I can see people, of more the millennial generation and even the generation after them saying, I don't want to work for this company. I know I can work remote now and they want me to come back to the office and I'm not interested. There's just going to be a lot of implications to talent as people get through these COVID reflections.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. The Great Resignation is a great term. I'm gonna have to borrow that term.
Yeah, that's a LinkedIn term. I can't take it, but there are many articles being published, and I can feel it coming.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I think people are sort of evaluating what's important. They're reevaluating their priorities now more than ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so some more questions. So what about coaching through division? We have political diversity, vaccination, where we work division, remote versus in person. How do we bring our employees together in our organizations? How do we coach through this?
Yeah, that is, so true. So, not only did we have a pandemic, we also had a lot of other division happening, within the world right now. And so it makes it very, very difficult. What was I thinking? So I think through the offerings that we have at TurkNet from a diversity and inclusion perspective, right? This question even makes me think of, there's really even a new unconscious bias out there around masks.
Right.
Yeah. When you see somebody, even now with the CDC's guidance saying it's okay, isn't your initial reaction, because you've been conditioned for 15 months, to go, oh, that person's not responsible. They don't care, and we have to now start going back to the data and the facts and reevaluating some of these preconceived things. But I do think that the offerings that TurkNet has around diversity and inclusion, and there are many of them, can help companies and help departments and all sorts of people manage through a lot of that.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, you're right. It has been, when we're talking about the pandemic, we forget that so many other things happened this year that has just as much change management fatigue and just so many other things that made us really question our priorities and question where we are on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think that's important to realize as well. What other questions do our participants have today? I want to make sure that we capture all of them. If you guys have any more. Let's see. What examples of resilience have you seen, and how do we teach this?
Oh,
that's a great question.
Yeah. Do you want to take that one?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm like, this is your specialty. This is you.
I can talk about resilience for hours. So, resilience is such an interesting thing, because I think a lot of people, the way that I define resilience is, or I think the way that a lot of people think of resilience is there's actually some small kids playing outside of my window right now, little kids running up a hill, falling and then getting back up, falling and then getting back up, right? It's the how fast you get up after a fall. It's not eliminating the fall. It's not eliminating the hardship. It is getting up when you fall. And little kids are the best at sort of demonstrating that resilience. Yeah.
That's a wonderful analogy.
It's one that I live every day, having small children. But what's important to remember about that is resilience is a muscle. Just like muscles in our biceps and et cetera. It is a muscle that you have to practice. It's not something that I think, yes, little kids have that innately, this ability to get up when they fall, but we sort of lose that over time. But we can rebuild it by practicing certain action steps, by thinking about what can we control in a situation, by thinking through reframing, by thinking through other sort of tactical skills. We can build on our resilience. And the more that we practice it, the more that we do it, the better that we become at it. So then the more, if things happen, we are able to recover from those negative things significantly faster than if we don't practice it at all. If we don't practice resilience, if we don't exercise that muscle, we are much more bound to sort of sit in inaction, and then creating that, whatever that negative thing is, lasting significantly longer. So, thinking of it through the pandemic, people that were let go, people that were laid off, the people that displayed strong resilience were people that updated their resume, that maybe pivoted their careers, that were networking and virtually networking, as much as we all are tired of Zoom. But the people that sort of set back and were really sort of down on themselves, and it would be interesting to see kind of where people are now with the different choices that they made, and how they exercise that resilience, and how they
that muscle.
Exactly.
Great.
I just want to chime in real quick. We're gonna wrap up here in a minute, but there is one last question that I think we could get an answer on before we go to close. Forrester is asking, what if we don't want to go back to normal? So in organizations, I'm sure you have plenty of employees who may not necessarily want to return to the office, even though the employer is asking them back. I have even my brother, who works remotely in Michigan, works for a company in Georgia. If the office comes back, he's let go. There's no There's no option there. So how do companies navigate that and kind of working with their employees who may have moved away or are working remotely and are just more comfortable where they are and they don't want to come back? How do you handle that?
I think that is such a highly relevant conversation. I think that probably most families, are experiencing that, and they've seen the advantages of it. And it's a bit of a Pandora's box, right? Because so many organizations pre-pandemic didn't think they could, and then they were forced to, and they can. So it's out, right? How do you get it back? Where I think organizations are really going to have this conversation is at a very senior level. And I think that it needs to become part of the talent development and talent management process, because again, the Great Resignation is coming. Brace yourself. And do you strategically, as an organization, want to lose really strong talent because they don't want to come back into the office?
Yeah.
And then, you're going to get into, you're going to have to really think that through as an organization, and maybe have somebody, guiding that conversation with you, because then you're going to have to think through the implications to others. If you do it for this one, can you do it for that one? What is your stance going to be? But I would strongly encourage organizations to start thinking differently about that. Because when you think about the cost that it takes to hire new people and get them up to speed, and just because, they made a life change and moved to Colorado during the pandemic because they were allowed to work 15 months and now you want them back in an office, how's that going to tie to your business strategy and your business objectives to have that talent leave for that reason?
Yeah. If I could just add to that too, I think what's important is not going back, right? Organizations, we don't want to go back to where we were necessarily in April or March of 2020. We want to create what is the new normal to what you just said, so that people are not leaving or feeling like they have to lose their jobs just because they moved to Colorado for 15 months.
Yeah. And I do think that people will be making those hard decisions and will take individual choices, based on something like that, and an organization's willingness to work with that. I do think that those conversations need to be very strategic and at a high level, and think through the implications before you just put out a blanket policy or a blanket statement.
Absolutely. JP, do we have time for one more question? There's one more question in the Q&A box.
Sure, of course.
So the question is, don't you think that going forward, everyone will need to grow their tolerance of ambiguity?
Totally. Yes, absolutely. And managing through ambiguity is a competency, right? It is a skill set. And so just when we talk about resilience and all of those other skill sets, there are ways in which you can do that. But I think that this has taught us, just back to that example, with the CDC changing guidelines. So of course, and this isn't going to stop.
No. Yeah. It's getting comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yep.
Well, this has been such a great discussion, guys. A lot of great questions, a lot of great topics, a lot of great issues discussed, and all highly relevant. But we are going to go ahead and wrap this up. If anyone else has any other questions that they want to send that we can answer post the webinar, we'll be sending out an email that'll have that information. So you can do that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick with everybody. Apologize for the process. All right. So I just want to thank everyone for coming out today. I hope everybody walks away with valuable insights that will help you and your organization navigate these difficult issues. At TLG, we're committed to helping individuals, teams, and organizations get through these difficult times with our full line of coaching programs and the other services mentioned. So we're here for you. We want to help. We're willing to help in any way we can. So I just wanted to leave this up here. Our President and CEO, Tino Mantella, we're standing by. If you need to reach out, if you want to reach out, we're happy to discuss and answer any questions and talk how we can help anyone in any organization or any team navigate through these challenges that we've discussed here today. So with that, we are going to close it out. So I just want to, again, thank you all for doing. Thank you to our panelists who did an amazing job today discussing these topics. And we hope to see everyone around for the next webinar.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.